Hello everybody, I'm really sorry it's taken me so long to do this tonight. I've had a few technical issues. So I just wanted to run through with you some other elements to herbal HRT following lots of questions that I've had so far. So the first thing that's really important to understand here is that many women choose not to take conventional HRT when they're going through menopause. So on that basis, we need to think about alternatives that are available to them. And of course, as a herbalist, I'm going to be promoting the use of herbs to buffer the effects of declining estrogen, which is basically what menopause is, as lovely as it is. So one of the things I want to start talking about this evening is kind of understanding a group of herbs which are called phytoestrogens. So phyto meaning pertaining to a plant, phytoestrogen, so estrogenic. So in many ways they actually mimic the way estrogen behaves in our body when we use them in a plant form. And so there's lots of controversy around using phytoestrogens, and there's been lots of research done over the years. And the general consensus as to how they behave is that they sit into the receptor that estrogen would sit in. So if you imagine you've got a receptor for estrogen, and the phytoestrogen, so the plant version, will actually sit inside that and mimic estrogen in the body. Now it doesn't stimulate your own estrogen, it just buffers the decline that you might be experiencing in menopause. So lots of the symptoms of menopause are of course the declining impact of estrogen, which is where we see a lot of the symptoms. So we find great benefit from using this group of herbs because they will buffer the effects, the declining effects, and also the imbalance between estrogen and progesterone that we talked about last week. So these phytoestrogenic herbs have a huge role to play when it comes to menopause and female health. So one of the important ones I wanted to talk about was a herb called Simicifuga. So Simicifuga, and we know it as black cohosh, that's the kind of common name. Now it's the root that we use, and so if you're ever buying a product that has got this herb in there, you want to make sure you've got the root, because the root is the really important element, that it's got a lot of these constituents that are known as glycosides and polyphenols. Now, without blinding you with too much science that you may not be interested in, these are the key components that have been studied for their phytoestrogenic activity. And what we know that this herb does when it's used in the right proportions and quantities is that it normalizes some of our female hormones, so luteinizing hormones, so LH, you might have heard, and FSH. So it can help an imbalance here, which is common in menopause. Now, one of the other benefits of black cohosh is that, you know, it does have this phytoestrogenic property to it. So in a way, it's less important as to exactly what your symptoms are, and more important that you're seeing a decline in those symptoms when you take this herb. So commonly we might use this herb for flushes. We might also use it for bone pain associated with declining estrogen, because estrogen has a really important role to play in bone metabolism and turnover. And when we see it decline, we start to see more problematic situations with bone, like bone pain, like aching for female athletes, but also early onset of osteopenia, osteoporosis. So, you know, we can use this for a myriad of things, but these are just the kind of main things. We also use it for dysmenorrhea, so disordered menses, sometimes longer cycles, sometimes shorter cycles. It can help to balance it. But also a condition which is called Mittelmerch, which is a bit of a mouthful. And if you want to put that in English language, it's ovary ache. So if you're ovulating and you're getting gripping pain as you're ovulating, this herb can be brilliant for that. And lots of women still do get ovary pain when they're moving into menopause. So that's black cohosh. So it can be used a lot in a cream base or in a formula. So if you're buying a multivitamin for women in menopause, you might see it in there, but always make sure that you've got the root in there. Now, one of the other key herbs that I want to talk about is wild yam. Now, wild yam is actually a progesterone mimic. what that means is that sometimes when women's levels of estrogen are declining, we talked about this a little bit last week, but estrogen is higher than progesterone, even though it's declining. And what this means is that you can end up in a state of estrogen dominance, so more estrogen relative to progesterone. It still means it's declining, but in relative terms, you've got more of one than the other. And then that gives rise to symptoms because the hormones need to stay in the right parameter together. So using something like wild yam can help to buffer this decline in estrogen. So we use it alongside other herbs for menopausal women, but it's often used in a kind of cream base. So there's lots of products that you'll see that are herbal based, that are wild yam as their key components, because it has such an abundant amount of these compounds called steroidal saponins, which again is another mouthful, but actually it determines, how much potential progesterone mimicking action that it's actually got. So you find it a lot in a cream base as well as in a tincture and powder. But again, a lot of these constituents are actually in the root. So if you're looking at a product that you might have at home now and you think, well, it's not actually really working, and you see it's not the root that's in the product, then the chances are that's why, because a lot of these constituents that we really want to work as progesterone mimics in menopause don't have the active constituents or the key constituent of the herb in the product. Okay, so some of the other elements that I kind of want to talk about is understanding the role of anxiety in this kind of herbal HRT profile, because lots of women do get really anxious because as estrogen declines, it also influences serotonin, which is our happy hormone. So it's quite normal to feel more anxious in menopause, slightly panicky. So some women report panic attacks and just a sense of doom and gloom, really. So if anxiety is the kind of key symptom, then a herb called passiflora, so passion flower, is such a brilliant herb. So we can use the leaf for this herb, which means that having it in a dried form in a tea is brilliant, as well as having it in a tincture, a liquid form, or in a capsule. So it's very good because it's a very mild sedative. So you could use it at night to help you sleep. But actually, if you're a bit revved up during the day and you're feeling anxious just about things that are fairly minor, then it's a really good idea to take it during the daytime, just to take the edge off of how you're feeling, so that rising anxiety. Now, because hormones fluctuate, and that's no different in menopause, you may find that you won't need to take passiflora all the way through the month. There might be certain periods where you need to take it more than the other. So it's the sort of thing to keep in your bag, have it handy, so that if there are situations that trigger you, then you've kind of got it to hand. So also if women suffer from GIT disturbance, so stomachache, gut disturbance, when they're feeling anxious, so you feel things in your tummy like a nervous tummy, then actually that's brilliant for that as well, so that it doesn't affect your gastric disturbance. So mainly try and think of circular thinking. So I like to call it washing machine thinking, whereby you're going over the same point time and time again, and not really having any resolution to it. It's perpetually worrying, maybe about health, maybe, about a certain situation at work, an argument. You're anticipating that that's going to happen again. So passiflora is brilliant for that. And actually we use it a lot also for neuralgia and headaches. So if you're getting headaches and neuralgia associated with menopause, then it's definitely part of my kind of HRT formula. So one of the kind of last things I want to go through, because I don't want to kind of take too long, your precious evening, is just really to reiterate this point about phytoestrogens and why we might use them as part of our herbal kind of HRT protocol. Now, over the coming weeks, I'm going to try and always do, for the next 6 weeks certainly, do a little bit about understanding herbal HRT and menopause on a Tuesday night, because I just feel compelled that not enough people really understand how amazing herbs are and actually what a brilliant alternative they are should you choose to do that route. But one of the things that's kind of really important, as well as understanding that we have these in our locker, these phytoestrogens, and how brilliant they are for us, is just understanding some kind of lifestyle element. So exercise and physical activity can really enhance your herbal HRT protocol. And although we're not necessarily talking about exercise now, it's worth understanding that we talked about nutrients. If you're really depleted, so you're low in some of the key nutrients, then your hormonal and menopausal symptoms will be magnified by 100%. So looking at your nutrients, of course, looking at your diet, and we'll do some sessions on that. But physical activity and moving generally plays a really important part. And what we know by looking at the research is that kind of 1 in 4 women consider leaving their job due to menopausal symptoms, but actually exercise can be a perfect remedy for that. So movement is medicine. You've heard me say that hundreds of times before, but actually it's a really key part of your herbal HRT actually working. So some women will say, well, I tried it, but it didn't work. But actually maybe it didn't work because you're not moving enough, and exercise is a really key part of that. So some of the other things are 63% of women say that their menopausal symptoms have negatively impacted both their mood and work, again, so have considered leaving. And 30% of women often end up with mental health issues because they're not addressing any potential deficiency or changing their circumstance that could have potentially led to that. And we know that when we followed these women in studies, that when they, include physical activity 5 days a week for at least 30 minutes a day, then we know that that ratio goes down from 30% to as little as 5%. So it can really, really enhance a protocol. I'm not promoting any physical activity program, but it's free for most people and freely available. So getting out there and doing it will really enhance your experience of when you use herbs alongside exercise for menopausal symptom. Of course, it will help with weight loss because we know that as estrogen declines, our body weight shifts and body fat moves around, which can be quite distressing for women. It also helps with bone density. So we've talked about some of the herbs for bone density, but actually exercise itself is really amazing. And also increases endorphins, so our happy hormones, the hormones that make us feel good. And that's often why we exercise, for that feel-good factor. And also it has a positive impact on appetite. One of the last things about exercise, of course, to remember is it helps with your cortisol level, which is your stress hormone that gets produced when you're really revved up and feeling anxious. So physical activity, I can't kind of promote it enough. So I'm going to kind of close it there for tonight. Once again, sorry it's a bit late getting going. So phytoestrogens are worth looking into. Look at the products that you might have available at home. See what's in them. Is it the root? Is it the leaf? Have you got the right part in there? And just remember, with all supplements, all herbal protocols, be it HRT or not HRT, if you don't feel better within 14 days of taking it, the chances are it's the wrong product for you. So you should always feel better within 14 days of taking something new. And if you don't, then you need to change it or not repeat buying it. So I'll say good evening and thank you, folks, for joining in. And I hope to see you over the coming weeks as we just expand our knowledge and just raise awareness of all the alternatives that are available to us from a natural medicine point of view to treat or support, I should say, menopause. Thank you.